Hello everyone and welcome to lesson 6-2, multiplication and division equations. This lesson is found on page 447. When we work with multiplication and division equations, we're going to work with terms, a number of terms, and we will work with variables and coefficient. The expression 3x means 3 times the value of x, so 3x's, right? The numerical factor of the multiplication expression, like 3x, is called a coefficient. It works, this number, the 3 that you see right there, works with the x, okay, right there. That's called the coefficient because it will change the value depending on the value of x. They're being multiplied with x. If x is 2, this entire expression is 6. If x is 4, this entire expression is 12. So this is codependent on the variable, so we call it a coefficient. So 3 is the coefficient of x. The figure below illustrates the multiplication equation 3x equals 6. So here we have 3x's, 1, 2, 3, equals 6 of them. So 3x equals 6. And we can say that x must equal 2. Because for every x, we have 2 of them. 1x, 2 of them. Another x, another 2. The solution of 3x equals 2. Now there's a different way to do this, and I'm sure you've remembered from previous lessons where we isolate the variable and invert the operation. For example, if I have 3x equals 6, I want to isolate my x. And you understand that over here I'm multiplying. I'm actually multiplying 3 times x, right? So if I want to isolate this variable, I'm going to write it as x equals 6. What happens to the 3? Well, on this side it's multiplication. On the other side it's going to do the opposite. So if it's being multiplied here, it's going to be divided here. So now it becomes divided by 3. All I did, I moved it to the other side in order to isolate the variable, leave it on its own. Now, when I complete it and I have x, 6 divided by 3 equals 2. Write an equation that represents each of the following models below. Identify the coefficient in your equation, then solve. Okay, here we have 1, 2, 3, so we have 3 x's, right? So we would write it as 3 x's, correct? Because we have 1, 2, 3, so 3 x's, our coefficient is 3, equals 4 by 3 is 12. We have 12 of them there. So how would we write that? Well, we'd write that as 3x is 12. Right? The coefficient being the 3, as we identified before, it's the number that's codependent on the variable. And our solution, well, 3 times a number, remember, 3 times a number equals 12. 3 times 4, right? And you can see it here, that every x equals 4. This x equals 4, and this x equals 4. So our x simply equals 4. Let's try number 2. I see that 1x, well, I see that I have 2 x's, so it's 2 x's, right? 2 x's, 1, 2. And I see that 1x equals negative 4. You see that? There's 4 of them there, negative 4. Another x equals negative 4. So my expression is going to look at 2x equals, in total, negative 8, right? Because we have negative 8 here in total. And my coefficient is the 2. It's the one that's being multiplied with the variable. And each x is worth negative 4. We've been learning about a lot of properties like distributive property, identity, multiplication and addition, and we've learned about associative and commutative properties. Now we're going to look at division property of equality. And what they're trying to imply here is that, you know how we do the isolating the variable and inverting the operation? Well, what they actually want you to do, another way to do it, is to divide from both sides of the equation, to divide the numbers out. So here's what it means. The division property of equality states that the two sides of an equation, so this side and this side, or this side and this side, remain equal when you divide each side by the same non-zero number. Okay, so you cannot do it by 0. You can use the division property of equality to solve multiplication equations. What they mean was this, boys and girls. So we had earlier, we had 3x equals 12, right? Or 6, or it doesn't matter. What they want us to do is to divide out the coefficient. So if I'm going to divide the coefficient out here, I must do it on this side as well. Whatever you do to one side of the equation, you must do to the other side. And it cancels out over here. 3 divided by 3 is going to be 1. and we don't put the 1 in front of the variable. Okay, so we just write x. So we would have just x be divided out. And 12 divided by 3 is 4. And this is the way they're asking us to do it. Just divide the coefficient out. But whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other, and there's your answer. You can see how it's done here with the example 1. When they say 20 equals 4x, you want to divide out the coefficient. So you divide this by 4, which means you have to divide this side by 4. And when you do so, 20 divided by 4 equals 5, as you see right there. So x is 5. And you can check. You can multiply 4 times 5. If it equals 20, then it's correct. 4 times 5 is 20. 20 is 20. There you go. You can also do it with negative number. Now remember, following the rules, when signs are the same, they are positive. When they're different, they're negative. So you can see here that we're going to divide out the coefficient negative 8, right? Negative 8. So when we divide it out, we're left with the y. But 24 positive, or 24 divided by negative 8, it's going to give you a negative number, so it's negative 3. And it's right, it's true. If you multiply negative times a negative, negative 8 times negative 3, which is the y, right? You're going to get a positive number, positive 24. Now, I believe you're quite capable of doing these on your own, so please pause the video and try it. But when you try it, I want you to try it both ways. Okay? Try doing it my way, where you isolate the variable and invert the operation. So you would bring the 6 to this side and divide it, and then you have x equals whatever your quotient is of 30 divided by 6, right? Because it's multiplication on this side, it'll be division on this side. You can also try it where you just work out with the, you divide out the coefficient. Let's go ahead, pause it, try all three, and then check my work. Okay, I hope you paused the video. Alright, A. We have 30 equals 6x. I divide out the coefficient. I'm left with an x. 30 divided by 6 is 5. Negative 6a equals 36. Try to divide out the coefficient. And I have to do it from both sides. If I do it on this side, I must do it on this side. So I have negative 6 divided by negative 6 is going to be 1, which is my a. So I just write out my a right there. And positive 36 divided by negative is going to be a negative. So it's negative 6. And it's true. If I multiply negative 6 times negative 6, that's going to give me a positive 36. Okay, negative 9d equals negative 72. I'm going to divide out the negative 9 from this side, so it cancels it out, and I have just d left. And I do it from this side as well, negative 9. And negative is going to give me a positive, and it's going to give me 8. d equals 8. Okay, let's see how this variable can work, or the concept of a variable can work in real life context. Leela sent 574 text messages last week. Wow, that's a lot of text messages. On average, how many messages did she send each day? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out what this number is in days. So what we're going to do, we write it as 574 messages. It's the same as 7 times a number, some messages. And the reason we do 7 is because there's 7 days in a week, right? They're saying that this was the number of messages in a week. It's the same as 7 times a number. We're trying to figure out what m is. A lot of you have figured out already that if you just divide this number by 7, you would get it. But this is how you write it algebraically. And you have 574 divided by 7, so you divide out the coefficient, and you get 82 messages. M is 82. Let's look at the word problem. Mrs. Acosta's car can travel an average of 24 miles on each gallon of gasoline. Wow, that's pretty good, 24 miles a gallon. Write and solve an equation to find how many gallons of gasoline she will need for a trip of 348 miles. 348 miles. So we know this, boys and girls. We know that it gets 24 miles on each gallon of gasoline, but we don't know how many gallons, so it's going to be 24 times the number of gallons, and it's going to give us 348. Okay? We are trying to figure out how many gallons we need for 348 miles, and we know that each gallon here will give us 24 miles. So you understand this expression, that 24 for each gallon. It's 24 miles for each gallon, but we don't know how many gallons yet. That's what we're trying to look for, you see? Write and solve the equation to find how many gallons of gasoline she will need. We know that she gets 24 per gallon, and we want to figure out how many we need to multiply that 24 times to get 348. So again, we divide out the 24 from both sides, okay, and we get x equals 14.5, and that unit is gallon. So your therefore statement should state she will need 14.5 gallons for her trip.